Hello everyone, I'm Tyson Worth with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Johnson County.
And I'm Francisco Garcia, also with Big Brothers Big Sisters, Johnson County.
And I'm Amy Kohler. I'm with Johnson County 4-H.
And these two went to a suicide prevention training recently along with some of our other colleagues, and they were kind enough to sit down with us for a minute and share some of their biggest takeaways for you all so that you don't have to necessarily sit through the whole training but can hopefully get some ideas or knowledge or strategies that may be helpful if you or someone else you know may be struggling. So, is there anything in particular you guys want to start with?
Well, Tyson, if I do, bring it up right now, I do want to say that suicide is a very sensitive topic that we've kind of ignored throughout our lifetime. Really avoiding the word suicide, but suicide is on the rise since the mid-90s, suicide rates. There's about 45,000 suicides a year. 1 out of 6 young people seriously considered suicide. Suicide deaths are more than homicides in the U.S. I think it's the 10th leading cause of death. And there's about 123 suicides a day, so we really need to approach this issue more seriously.
And unfortunately, I know anxiety and depression are also on the rise for young people in particular, and obviously there could be associations there. So what do you think are important for people to know if they are, in a position where they have a concern potentially?
Well, at the training, what we learned was that this is an example. If you were in a restaurant and you saw someone choking, you would do something about it. You would get up, you'd go ask the person a question, are you choking? And you would perform CPR if that person was choking. So when we're, around a youth or an adult in our life who are showing signs that you're concerned that they could be suicidal, you do something about it. You ask a question, and that they gave us, it's an acronym, QPR. They actually gave us these little booklets to refer to, but instead of CPR, it's QPR. And the very first part of Q is asking the question. And the question is, there's many ways of asking the question, but really you're trying to find out if they are having suicidal thoughts. And as Francisco was saying, it's awkward to bring up that question, and it's not something you just jump right into. I mean, you're leading into what's going on in your life. You mentioned that you're feeling hopeless, can you tell me more about that? And it's part of being a really good listener and giving that other person time to share what's going on in their life. And as a person, being a good listener, but as you're listening for those clues that are letting you know, no, there is an issue here that needs to be addressed. So listening and then waiting and then asking that question. Are you having thoughts of, harming yourself? Have you ever had thoughts like that? Are you feeling so hopeless that maybe you're considering suicide? And I guess that was my greatest takeaway out of all of this, was being direct. Like, I'm sometimes so worried about offending somebody or making a situation worse that I tiptoe around.
What would you say to people who are worried that by asking that question, they may be worried about planting a seed then for that person?
They actually talk about that in the training, and that's the greatest myth. It's not true at all. It's better. Research has shown that it is better to be direct and ask the question, that will save a life by asking the question if you're if you're having suicidal thoughts, than not even asking the direct question at all. So.
And I went to a youth mental health first aid class not too long before you guys went to this one, and they said that if you ask that question, are you feeling suicidal, or have you had suicidal thoughts, and the person says yes, then ask a follow-up question. So, do you have a plan, or have you thought about how you might go about it, something like that, so you can really get a gauge on where they're at, and obviously if they have started to formulate a plan or specific thoughts, then it's an even more urgent situation. And so that's the Q, right? And the P part of QPR, so question, P is?
Persuade. So persuade is you want to persuade them to, not follow through. So you can always address like, hey, I've seen some red flags. Do you have any suicidal thoughts? And if they answer, kind of or positively, you can always state, hey, can you promise me not to follow through until we found some help in the future? So hey, I'm gonna follow up with you tomorrow to see how you're doing. Most young people don't tell them don't, so that's also another thing. But you want to persuade them out of those negative thoughts.
And that, I remember at the training I mentioned, they were talking about, and that training was by Iowa State University Extension Outreach in evidence-based training, and they were talking about how you don't necessarily want to get into an antagonistic position of saying you have all these reasons to live for, because then the person's natural reaction is going to be to try and come back against that, and maybe that wouldn't be the most helpful thing for them, but instead to really persuade them to get help, to give them lots of different options for maybe going with them to a hospital or a clinic, or to call with them to try and schedule an appointment, or sharing a resource like Iowa Concern Line or Teen Line are free numbers that anybody can call 24/7. So really kind of gently encouraging and persuading that way. Is that your understanding of that as
Yeah,
well?
persuading them to a professional, really, because that's not something I have education in. So it's, and a lot of us don't, we're not, educated in that. So it is best to persuade them to get help so that the professional then can diagnose how severe and what is going to be the best. Because sometimes, like you were saying earlier, it's depression that maybe isn't even treated yet. But by sending them to a professional, they can go, oh, well, this is depression, and this is, something that we can treat with medication or whatever the situation is. But it's best for a professional to diagnose what's actually going on. So yeah, that's the P part of the QPR is persuade to professional.
And then the R is respond?
Refer, actually.
Refer. Okay.
I was thinking it was respond, it's refer. Refer, and really, so after you've had that really carrying conversation and saying, can we please, would you be willing, if I go with you, can I help you make that call? Can I help you get there? So you persuaded them, they've said, yes, I'm willing to go get help. Then it's referring them to that professional, but you being there, like to really make sure that they do it. So that's you saying, okay, I will make the appointment. Does Tuesday work for you? I'll drive you. It's like really taking those, steps to make sure that it happens. Is that refer?
So most suicidal people don't believe they can be helped, so you might have to refer or be more assertive with the referrals.
Well, so QPR, question, persuade, and refer. Is there anything else out of this training? We should mention this was a training facilitated by the Community Crisis Center, formerly or Community Crisis Services, formerly the Crisis Center. But is there anything else out of that you guys think people should really know in terms of major takeaways?
I think for me as a takeaway, like, I'm just so afraid of maybe doing something wrong, and I felt like the takeaway, she had us do some exercises, we're actually, Francisco and I were doing some role playing, and I was like, oh, that's awkward, and in that situation that might be awkward, but what I found out was it actually comes more naturally than we realize. We are, as humans, we're caring. We care about other people, so we naturally are having those conversations already. And so it's nothing we don't need to put all this pressure on ourselves that I'm going to say the wrong thing. It's better to just ask the hard question, are you having these suicidal thoughts, and starting that conversation than not having the conversation at all. Like that really was my greatest takeaway.
Anything else?
And something alarming, the LGBTQ plus community, they are 5 times more likely to attempt suicide. Women are most likely to consider suicide, but men are most likely to follow through with suicide, which are just some statistics or facts that we should keep in mind when
Be extra vigilant about. Did they discuss any kind of warning signs, anything that, you know, people might look for or listen for if they're concerned?
Yeah, they went over like behaviors that you would notice, verbal, you know, things that they're saying or even written, were the three things. Behaviors, you know, if somebody's in your life that you just see that their personality and that their regular routine is really changing. So maybe it's a student in school, their grades just completely plummet, or they isolate from their friends would be a change, or
giving up prized possessions just out of nowhere. So always,
Yeah.
that's a red flag as well.
yeah.
And obviously, if there's been a traumatic event recently, that could be very much affecting them. And I remember, you know, everybody has ups and downs, right? But I think the time period that they shared in our training was that if you notice a sustained change for more than 2 weeks or so, then that might be, you know, a red flag as well. It's not just a part of the normal cycle of ups and downs that we all have, but something more long-lasting and significant, perhaps.
Yeah, and I'd say too that sometimes with suicide, they were talking in training that, you know, a person that when we're struggling with severe hopelessness, it could be because of a bullying situation, or they've gone through a traumatic situation in their life. It could be, you know, an illness in the family, or they themselves have been gone through some kind of trauma of abuse or things like that, or so bullying, trauma, depression was another one.
If a friend
Addictions.
has had a suicide or suicide attempt,
Yes.
that can certainly,
Yep.
or family
It
member.
actually increases the risk
Mhm.
of that person. If you have a loved one or family or friend in your life who's committed suicide, actually you have a greater chance. The risk is higher.
And I think if you have a previous attempt of your own as well, then the risk is higher than for the general population. So, unless there's anything else that you guys want to add, I think I'll just thank you very much for sharing. You know, these guys love being on camera. They do this all the time. Not at all. They did it because they care about the kids that we work with, and I know you guys all do too, or you wouldn't be watching this. So thank you for being an ally. Don't hesitate to reach out to Big Brothers Big Sisters, to 4-H, to Community Crisis Services, or NAMI is another local agency, National Alliance on Mental Illness. There's a lot of good resources around, so if you're wondering where you can get more information, get more help, go to our website, give us a call. We'd be happy to refer you to more.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Thanks.